to the scene of the fire now. President Cyril Ramaphosa was due to make a national address at 8 o'clock this evening. He was going to give an update on the BRICS summit and also speak about that Lady R report. However, he has cancelled that because he's on his way downtown to visit the site of that horrific tragedy. ENCA's Moloko Moloto joining us now. Moloko, has the president arrived yet? Good evening.
Good evening, Sally Badet. Well, the president hasn't arrived yet, but of course we have seen the statement from his office saying that he was meant to be here at 5:30, as you correctly said. He has cancelled that public address due to this tragedy that has been described as a tragedy of crisis proportion. Sally, this story has hawked even international media headlines from the United States to Europe. It is a story that is being spoken about widely. If you look at the amount of coverage and attention that it is receiving. And of course, so many people dying in that inferno. And this is a situation which some people have described as, the manifestation of lawlessness that continues to be prevalent in our cities, because the area where these people, or that 5-story building that these people died in, the senior officials from the city of Johannesburg, including the MEC of Koksta here in Gauteng, when they visited it earlier on, the picture they were painting really was so gory. I mean, they were saying that according to even Robert Molaudzi from the Joburg Emergency Services, that there were about 80 to 100 shacks that are built, Sally, in a 5-story building. Now, for a situation to get to that level, it goes to show that there really has not been any enforcement of bylaws and all that. Of course, on the other hand, you will have the city saying that they do challenge these things, and when they evict people, they are taken to court. I just want to ask Shahid, Sally, to come this side, because I can hear, it seems the president's convoy is arriving here. The police are moving the crowd of people who are here as onlookers. And the president, obviously, having listened to everyone, from the executive mayor to the premier of the province and many other people in the province of Gauteng, definitely the president, as the head of state, the expectation would therefore be that he will have to speak to this, the lawlessness that continues to happen here. You can see there's the president in one of his cars. We will try to follow. And the issue of ensuring that this kind of things do not continue to happen, so much really will rest on his shoulders as the head of state to provide leadership at this time of grim and crisis.
It's absolutely horrific, and we are waiting for the president. As you say, it seems he has arrived. He's cancelled this national address that he was going to make. The reality is this is just one of many hijacked buildings in the city, Moloko, and the fear, of course, is that this could so easily happen again.
Well, absolutely, Sally. I mean, the fact that you have had so many people living under those abhorrible conditions, and nobody really seemed to be willing at least, or showing some kind of leadership to say this ought to be resolved. Of course, when you listen to them, they are lamenting the fact that when they act, they are being challenged through the courts of South Africa. The reality is that the courts are applying the law, and any of decisions that are being taken, if they are not in compliance with the law, they will certainly be challenged. There is the President of the Republic, of course, on his side, the Premier of Gauteng. He certainly is going to be given a report. I would imagine that he has already been told, but I think formally he will just have to be taken through this area of disaster. You are talking, Sally, about the possibility of this happening again. According to Lebogang Maile, who is the MEC of Koksta,
all right, we seem to have lost your sound. Maloko. What I'm actually going to do until we get your sound back, we're going to keep our image going of the president. This is a picture of the president arriving, obviously to see exactly what's been happening. Maloko, we're going to keep eyes on that. It looks like the president's moving into the building. But with me in studio now is Angela Rivers. She's the general manager of the Johannesburg Property Owners and Managers Association. Angela, thank you so much for joining us. We're just going to keep our eyes on what's going on in downtown Johannesburg. I know that you were on Channel earlier today, yes, but I would imagine there's been significant developments, some very interesting and I would say disturbing information coming out from what Floyd Brink, the city manager, had to say this afternoon, yes, that in 2019 someone was arrested as a suspected hijacker of this very building, and then it never went to court. Why does it seem these issues are so very hard to sort out?
Thank you so much for having me on your show. I appreciate it. I think the biggest and the most important thing is that there is an overall unwillingness for the city to really...
Hold that thought, Angela.
Yes.
The President is speaking.
Yes.
Let's listen in quickly.
Okay.
The President, feel free.
All right, so we're just trying to get the sound going, but we can see there's
MMCs present, MMCs. President, at 90 minutes past 1 o'clock, early hours of the morning, as EMS got a call of this building on fire. We had no choice but to respond with all resources that we had. At 01:39, it was confirmed that 10 dead bodies were already jumping out of the building on the western side. That on its own said to us we needed to deploy more resources. We deployed a total of 7 fire engines of different fleets. The incident firefighting per se, it was contained at 04 hours in the morning. We resumed with search and rescue. In the search and rescue, that's when we picked up bodies which were trapped in the building. Them being trapped is because of the building was hijacked in 2019 and it was an illegal occupation. In so saying, during the evacuation routes, they had to put their own steel barriers to protect themselves either from other criminals, but that became detrimental for them to evacuate. They couldn't go out. Those were supposed to come from the 4th floor to the 3rd floor. They were trapped because of the doors were closed and they were locked. President, it's so sad they perished in that situation. We eventually rescued 49 victims and we pulled out 73 dead bodies. And we also, during the course of the day, in sweeping from the basement to the top floor, we picked up 4 body parts. Amongst them, there were kids, there were adults of different categories. We've since handed over the scene to South African Police Services. They came with the K9 units, they came with JMPD K9 units, also to assist us in terms of the search and sweeping of the floor to make sure that the scene is covered. We didn't leave any body parts in the building itself. That's it, President. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mna. I think it's part of the leadership of police in the province.
Good evening, President. Yes. President, I think as my colleague has explained to you, that is exactly what has transpired. And then the engineer for safety has come here and he has inspected the building. And he has alluded to us that the building is not safe for occupation, but the building can only be cleaned up, or we can check if there is any debris or any human remains that are in the building to be removed. Then as SAPS tomorrow, we will be asking our K9 dog unit to come with the sniffer dogs to check for more bodies if there is any inside the building, President. But as for now, President, what my colleague has explained to you is exactly what has happened. We've been working together since from the morning up to date. I'm with Brigadier Jones from the district office. Maybe you'd like to explain further to you, President.
Please come in.
Brigadier Jones.
Please come in the center here.
Good evening, Mr. President.
Good evening.
Over and above that, we are going to be here tonight to secure the scene, Mr. President. Then we'll be back tomorrow morning with all other law enforcement agencies to secure this building again. Thank you, Mr. President.
So allow the municipality as well. The city manager and the mayor. City manager and the mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I would like to give our city manager an opportunity because he's the one that is leading the first respondents and is also leading a technical team that is assisting us. The Speaker of Council is also here with social relief. But just to give you a detailed background, Floyd Prince, our city manager, will appraise you.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Premier. From our side, it is clear, Mr. President, that indeed it's about 200 households or so that have been affected. We've already ensured through our own social development in the city as well as provincial department to provide social workers to assist with assessment, trauma counseling and so forth. We've already relief. We've been approached by so many private sector companies that came forward to assist us with some form of donation. A lot of work needs to be done from our side, from a law enforcement point of view. We can indicate you, but the team has worked around the clock. I'm not sure if Mr. Monacheng indicated one, and our first respondent was here by 29 minutes past. That they move floor per floor. So at this point we've got about 74 fatalities, including the one in the hospital, of which 12 of those are minor or children at this point. That's what we've got at this stage.
That's one, President. We have put a joint team between ourselves, the city, and the stakeholders here. The ward councillor has been very helpful. I don't know where he is. Where's that ward councillor? There, yes, come. The ward councillor has been very helpful. He can just give us the state of the building, the indications, and the work that they've been doing in the inner city so that we have a broader picture of the situation. He has also been here ever since, so he knows everything. What Councillor, please.
Thanks, Premier, President. And thanks, President. President, this building was once used for abused women and children. It was a shelter. Then it was sent as a shelter. But then the people who were having a lease, it was expired on the 2013. But after that, then the thugs came in and hijacked the building. It happened once where one of the officials of the JPC were being manhandled here by these thugs and criminals. The other side, it was a clinic. Then it was closed because of some structural compliance. Then also is also hijacked, also that one. But let me take an opportunity to appreciate in terms of assistance that came from EMS and also the city, in particular the local government, that they make it a point that they assist the residents and also the family. Everyone that is being affected here is being assisted. As they are here now, a CM is here, and EM is here, and the speakers here. All the MMCs were also here to assist everybody that is affected here.
Just with the President of the difficulties of people who want to go back into the building and they don't want to go to places.
There's a challenge, President, because what is happening is that some people are still staying outside, even though the city have organized a place for them to stay, because they say their belongings are still inside here. But they cannot go inside now because the building is not safe. It needs to be fenced off. Then the social engineers, they also need to come out to check so that they can finalize and issue the report before anybody can come and take his belonging or her belonging. For now, nobody can come in. We are facing that challenge because the residents, the people who are staying here, the victims, they don't want to go. They are scared that maybe their belonging will be lost, they will be stolen. That's the challenges that we are having.
Okay. President, maybe together with the municipality, just take a walk around the door and then we'll then address the media that is here.
Let's open up, guys. Let's open up. Thank you.
All right. So, Maloko, I can see that the president is now going to do a bit of a walkabout. I'm sure he'll have something to say after that. So, Maloko, we're going to stay on your picture as long as we can, but I do have a guest in studio, and I'd like to get back to her, and that, of course, is Angela Rivers. And Angela, we were chatting just before the president arrived. Angela, as the general manager of the Johannesburg Property Owners and Managers Association, what do you know about this particular building when it was hijacked? We know it was a government building, but we know it was leased out for a shelter for women and children. When was it hijacked? Is it clear?
No one's really clear when it was hijacked. It was probably hijacked around 2014. But I don't know what the whole thing with the lease expiring, I don't think that has anything to do with the fact that building hijackers don't care whether you've got a lease or not.
Sure.
So they saw an opportunity, they saw a weakness in the system, and they took advantage of it, like most building hijackers do, because building hijackers are opportunistic. And the issue that we have is any building that's owned by the City of Johannesburg, municipality, provincial government, are easy targets for hijacking.
Why are they easy targets?
They're not managed properly at all. The city doesn't have qualified building managers. In fact, I don't even think their building managers know how to manage a building. They're just putting people in place, to give them a job. JPOMA has put together a building managers course that we developed 5 years ago, and we've been offering it to the city every year, saying, give us your building managers, we'll qualify them for you so that you can protect your buildings.
And it's interesting, the blame game started very early with the Speaker of Joburg, Colleen Makobela, actually basically blaming the victims. We've heard former Mayor Herman Mashaba blaming NGOs, saying they're the ones who keep stopping these evictions. What do you make of comments like that?
So this is quite an interesting topic. So they're all blaming the PI Act, which is the Prevention of Illegal Eviction Act, which was put together in 1998. So to now say 25 years later that this act and these policies are preventing them to do evictions, they've had 25 years to fix this act, because the act is very clear. It states that you cannot evict anybody unless you have alternative accommodation that needs to be supplied by the municipality. Yep. And that's where the problem comes in, because the municipality can't even do regular housing, never mind emergency housing or any kind of housing. And a really good example of that is there's a building in Berea called Casimir. It's a government-owned residential building that was developed specifically as temporary emergency housing. So as people are evicted from one building, they go to Casimir, they get themselves established, and then they can move on. That building is hijacked, but to such an extent that the surrounding buildings are losing tenants because of the state of that building. We have a member who has a building right next door, and they cannot let the entire one side of their property because there's gunshots through the windows, beer bottles get thrown through the windows into their building. So they've lost 30% of their building.
How many buildings are hijacked in Joburg?
The list that I have, which was given to me by our members, is 57.
And how many buildings have been successfully liberated from hijackers?
Probably about 5.
Why is it so difficult?
So, first of all, the PI Act prevents you from just evicting anyone. You have to go through a court.
You can get a court order.
You can get a court order, but you can get a court order, you can go through the legal process. All that happens is when it gets to the point where you now have to remove everybody out the building, you cannot move them without alternative accommodation. You're not allowed to throw people into the streets.
Okay.
And that's where the holdup comes in.
It's not impossible. It's just, it makes it more laborious. I'm just keeping an eye on the president. Doesn't seem like he's addressing as yet. We'll cross to him as soon as he does.
Yes.
I want to try and get in that last question. This 2019 issue,
yes,
where a suspected hijacker was arrested for this very building, which means the police knew this building was hijacked, the city knew this building was hijacked. And with that, they must have known that it was a dangerous place for people to live. Think about that while we listen to the president.
Okay.
At a police function, and early in the morning I heard about this tragic event. We are very saddened as government about the passing of so many people here in Johannesburg. This is unprecedented. Johannesburg has never had an incident like this where so many people die as a result of fire in the center of the city. So this is tragic. This is very sad, and I want to pass my condolences and that of the government to the families of those who have passed on and those who are still in hospital. I'm told that as soon as the fire was reported at 1:19 in the morning, in 10 minutes the firefighters were here. That is a real good and quick response, which we must recognize on the part of the province, the city, that they have been able to be ready for calamities and events like this. A response of 10 minutes when there's such a devastating fire is something that needs to be recognized. The sad part is that much as they fought the fire, they were not able to save everyone. And some people were saved, up to 49, but it's said that we've lost up to 74 people, and some of them children, who must have died very, very tragically. And this is the type of death that we never wish on anyone. And the aftermath of all this, in terms of the actions that have been taken, I have found to be in line with what we expect. The people were taken to hospitals, those who were still in a state of shock and injury, to the surrounding hospitals, and those who have lost their homes or accommodation are going to be catered for. The ministers and the MECs and the province and the city are working now full out to make sure that those who need assistance, from accommodation to trauma counseling to hospitalization, are being looked after. Now, obviously, this needs to be investigated. I was talking to the Premier earlier, and we are going through, and they are going through the process of setting up an investigation process, which the Premier and the city will announce in due course. We've got to go to the bottom of what caused this fire and also address from now on. It's a wake-up call for us to begin to address the situation of housing in the inner city. That a building like this, which I'm told used to be a home for abused women and children, once the lease had expired, it was then hijacked, and we need to get on top of this and find effective ways of dealing with problems of accommodation, of housing and services in the inner city. So the people who are, the mayor is here, the municipal manager and members of the mayoral committee like Councillor Dada, Morero and others are here, and they will be applying their minds, and I want them to find solutions and better ways of dealing with the challenge of housing that we have in the inner city. So once again, condolences to the families of those who have lost their lives, and I know that people will be upset and fearful, and those are issues that we've got to deal with, and we will deal with them. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. President. I think this highlights the issue, as you mentioned, of the hijacked buildings and the lawlessness that comes with it, which is seemingly being allowed to happen. These people pay rent to landlords. Surely the police can crack the whip, or authorities can crack the whip on these buildings. And this is just one of 100 of buildings around the COJ. Why is this being seemingly allowed to happen, President?
Well, not that it's being allowed to happen. It's an overwhelming problem, which the city, I know, has sought and has been working on addressing. This building having been, it's owned by the city, and they sought to try and get order into this building. And they were barricaded, and there were attempts that were made. And but the lesson for us is that we've got to address this problem and root and everything else, root out those criminal elements, because it is these types of buildings that are taken over by criminals who then levy rents on vulnerable people and families who need and want accommodation in the inner city. And it speaks to the type of cities that we should have in South Africa as we move forward. Poor people, yes, need to live in the city, but there needs to be order. There needs to be law and order in the inner city. And the initiatives that we are embarking on through our security forces, through Project Shanyela, is one of those that, working with the city and with the province, we are going to ensure that we root out all criminal elements and restore the livelihoods of people who live in the city.
Mr. President, the South African Human Rights Commission has challenged parliamentarians to change the PI Act to allow municipalities to evict people or carry out evictions without having to go to court. Is this something that you would then consider as Parliament?
Well, it's something that really needs to be considered, because there are processes that government needs to embark upon from the city level, provincial level and national level. And in terms of according our people the rights that they should have, we often find that there are restrictions, impediments that stand in the way. For instance, when it comes to accommodation like this, when a building is condemned and when we can find alternative accommodation, we go through too many processes, too many regulatory impediments that then can lead to this type of situation. And so Parliament needs to look at this so as to enable us to be able to execute and put in place the rights that our people should have without going through too many difficulties and impediments. That is something that we are also looking at. There are many rules that hold us back from doing what is right by our people.
Mr. President, Tim Begile from Newsroom Africa, when you talk about impediments, are you referring to the NGOs who've gone to court and said it's unconstitutional to evict people from these illegal buildings without providing them alternative accommodation? And if you say this is a wake-up call, why has it taken the deaths of close to 80 people for this wake-up call to come when illegal occupation of buildings in the CBD has been going on for years? And people have been saying it's a danger. People get raped, they get robbed by criminals who take over. Why should people have to die? Who ultimately takes political responsibility for the lack of a permanent solution to this problem years on?
NGOs play a very important role in the life of our country. So we are not standing here to shift blame and to cast blame on anyone. And if anything, we are all responsible for the calamity that has occurred. And we need to take it in stride and say, yes, this should never have happened. And yes, we should be learning a lesson. And sometimes these are very difficult lessons that have been sort of sparked off by loss of life. But nonetheless, this is a lesson, and yes, I repeat, a wake-up call, because we don't want to see a repeat of what has happened here. So therefore, we need now to look at, yes, the regulations, the laws, and everything, because we have achieved a great deal. Our constitutional construct has given all of us the rights that we have always yearned for. But we always find that we go through a number of processes as we try to do the right thing. At the same time, if there's either too many delays, too many detours, that then make it difficult for us to do the right thing at the right time. So that is one of the things that we are looking at also in government, because we are a caring government, And the speed of response that has happened here goes to demonstrate the fact that at local level, at provincial level, and yes, at national level, there is that care that our government does give to our people. It may fall short, but the determination to care for the people of South Africa is a priority, and a top priority at that. So thank you very much, and thank you for coming out this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well done, guys.
President Cyril Ramaphosa just addressing the media there, of course, after his oversight visit at the building that took the lives of 34 people. I beg your pardon, that's 74 people, Sally, that died in the early hours of today after, of course, being engulfed by flames. President just now giving that backdrop of what he's heard from some of the people that are flanking him, which includes Premier of Gauteng, which includes the Mayor of the city of Johannesburg, Speaker there as well. As they say, now they've received a wake-up call, and an issue that's been really ongoing for years, certainly. We know this is just one building of 100 that are around the city of Johannesburg, and we do know they actually pay tenants. They paying tenants, paying landlords, so it shouldn't really be difficult to crack the whip and get to the backdrop of who these landlords are and the authorities actually cracking the whip. But the president saying now they're promising that they're waking up and will deal the issue of these hijacked buildings around Johannesburg. President receiving some of the neighbors that are just right across the building, of course, that was engulfed by the fires, claiming the lives of 24 women, the lives of 40 males, as well as 10 of those that are unidentified because they were burnt beyond recognition. Sally, we do know at this stage at least 422 people are still left destitute, not knowing where they'll be sleeping tonight, but there's a promise there from President that the authorities that are on the ground will be assisting with that.
And Aviwa, just to come in here, we're going to keep our eyes on your visuals. But we know that there are 3 sites that have been identified around the city, and with the Department of Housing, in conjunction with the city, those people will be housed there tonight. But of course, they do face an uncertain future because their homes, albeit not up to standard, albeit not safe, that is what they knew as their homes. And they do face a very uncertain future. It was very interesting what the president had to say about the PI Act, which of course is the Prevention of Illegal Eviction. This is an act, and the way the act works, just to bring everyone up to speed, is if someone has hijacked your building or if someone is living in your building or your home illegally, first of all, you have to get a court order against them. Then you need to give them notice. But then, if those people in that building do not have a home to go to, it is the state's responsibility to provide alternative accommodation. But as we were listening to Angela Rivers, and she'll be rejoining us shortly, the general manager of the Joburg Property Owners and Managers Association, she was telling us that even the building in Hillbrow, Casa Mia, which is set aside as a temporary accommodation to help people when they've been evicted, even that has been overrun by building hijackers. She estimates there are about 57 buildings that are hijacked in the city of Johannesburg. Only 5, she says, have been successfully released from those hijackers. So, Aviwa, very important questions being posed to the president. The reality is that the authorities knew full well about this building being hijacked because in 2019, a suspect was arrested. They did know, and nothing came of it. I'm just going to come back to you, Aviwa. It looks like the president is leaving.
Yes, any moment now, President will be leaving, of course, Albert Street, where in the corner of Albert and Delvers itself is where this building that houses at least 400 plus people is, Sally. And of course, you heard there from the President, there's interventions and promises that have been made. But is it an issue of too little, too late? As you mentioned, this building was known of back in 2019 already, the status of it being hijacked. And of course, it's not even difficult to get the responses from the tenants themselves on how much they pay. Some of those that I've been speaking to today will tell me that they rent is at least some 700 rand or 1,500 rand that they pay to these landlords. But of course, that lawlessness that has been going on for years is seemingly being allowed to happen. One of those questions that I posed to President Cyril Ramaphosa, as he promises that now they are waking up, yes, admitting they've been sleeping as government, but now they've been waking up and they will, of course, be dealing with this issue effectively. A promise, Sally, that we don't know if, in fact, will live up to fruition and government will actually deal with the lawlessness that comes with the hijacking of these buildings. If you are to ask what happens inside here, you'll be told of brothels that are going on. You'll be told of drug gangs that are happening. You'll be told of just the informal settlements that are inside here. A room that's supposedly supposed to house 2 or so tenants is broken down by zincs, by boards, and separated, and you find that at least 10 or so people live inside one of those dwellings. All of them, of course, being pay-renting citizens. In fact, earlier on, I had a conversation with the Malawian Society, which said at that time, I think it was just around 2 o'clock, they had penned down people that were deceased from Malawi, and at that time there was around 20 people that had passed away from Malawi from the 74 that's now been official, and they were still missing some 5, and 5 of them were still in hospital. That's just some of those, a mix of residents that live inside here. As we spoke to even Tanzanian nationals, South African nationals that had lost relatives and loved ones inside here.
As we know, Abiwe, that the process of identifying the bodies is going to get into full gear from tomorrow.